Welcome to Take Your Lead podcast. I'm extremely glad that you've joined us and that you continue to invest in your growth as a leader. The thing about leadership is that it's something that's not static, but it's something that grows. And oftentimes we speak to how you do not go there, but you grow there. And growth is not automatic. Growth needs intention, it needs discipline, and it needs one to really be intentional about specific learning moments. And today's podcast episode is one that will help you grow, especially if you're a person that's leading teams and you're not too sure how to get them motivated, how to get them to buy into the vision, especially if you're within the space where you've got volunteers and people who are serving from a place of passion and there's not necessarily remuneration that they're receiving as yet. How do you motivate them? Podcast family, I'm extremely excited and truly honored on today's podcast episode to be joined in studio by a dear brother of mine, a dear friend of mine, a humorous person, so definitely gonna be laughing a lot on this podcast episode. It's just an amazing, he's a breath of fresh air. I think one of the things I love about the guest I'll be introducing now is his heart. He's got an amazing, big heart. So professional and so astute in terms of leadership and the great things that he does. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined in studio by Martin Mgiba, an attorney, a husband, and nearly said a father.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah. And just an incredible leader who's doing great things, an author, which we'll talk to, of incredible books that have really changed my life and have impacted my leadership greatly. And I'm truly honored, Martin, to be joined by you today. And I love you so much and I identify with you and I identify with the great gift and impeccable leader that you are. So welcome to Take Your Lead podcast.
So thank you so much. What a great honor to be sitting here with you, and I can't wait for us to just delve into the conversation. Yeah.
Maybe to tee it off on a bit of, just to not break the ice, but just what's the best joke that you've ever heard?
The best joke I've ever heard? Oh no, look.
Or funniest
Or
joke.
funniest. I think I'm more of a, how do I put it? I love stand-up comedy.
Okay.
But I prefer just, when people are not prepared and it's like an impromptu type joke. So I can't really think of a joke per se, but anything by Dave Chappelle or anything like, I think that always just gets
More recently, what joke or what figure or what cartoon, what is it that made you laugh recently?
What made me laugh recently? Let's see. I think, let's think of what type of meme has been trending at the moment. So I also like memes as well.
Yeah.
Nothing comes to mind as yet, but I love a good laugh. I definitely love a good laugh.
And the reason I'm asking this is because oftentimes leadership is very serious.
Yes.
And I'm teeing it off in a very unconventional, different manner.
Yeah.
But it gets very serious. It gets very, and the role that humor plays in the life of a leader. Because I think every leader needs to have that avenue where you're just able to laugh and just enjoy life.
Yeah. No, I think for me, it's also the element of being my personality.
Okay.
I'm actually having more to become disciplined in terms of being more serious.
Okay.
But generally speaking, my default position is just having a good time. I'm the life of the party. In most places I go. I was just laughing. In varsity, I won an award in my final year for being Mr. Personality. Imagine.
Wow.
In law school. So I've just been that guy.
In law school even?
Yeah, in law school. Even in some spaces, you find people just calling me, wanting to make sure that I'm there, just to bring the vibe. So no, I'm that guy.
That's the funny thing. I think one of the things I love about you is how you're such a social lubricant. You literally, in a social context,
Wow.
you just loosen the environment and just get people to be open and to be free.
No, thank you so much for that. And I think it's just now coming to a place where you have the courage to be yourself.
Okay.
And I found that for me, it's been such a powerful leadership tool.
Yes, sir.
People want relatability, and people tend to, so it tends to be such a powerful tool in terms of for leadership and for inspiring people.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll talk more to that. Okay, maybe let's actually just tee it off from there, because I'm actually thinking this is something so powerful.
Yeah.
The importance of being authentic as a leader, being yourself. How do you find your authenticity as a leader in the midst of having to learn and become, and there's quite a lot of influences? How does one now go about finding themselves and their own leadership philosophy?
Yeah, you know what? I think obviously we are also creatures of our environment.
Okay.
I had the advantage of growing up in a home where we're quite free.
Okay.
I grew up in a somewhat white environment as well, so that really helped. So that helped me to sort of become somewhat liberated. Okay. But I'll also say, there has to be a growth in terms of your own personality. So elements around issues of, let's say, emotional intelligence, yes, social intelligence also come into play. But ultimately, it takes somewhat of courage for you to be yourself, to bring your authentic self in any type of table. Andy Stanley says something so profound that, I think it's actually Craig Rochelle, that your best leadership tool is actually being real.
Wow. So most leaders would rather follow someone who's real.
Yeah, someone who's real.
Coins it,
but there's a way. That's, I mean, with all those, the brilliant content that he brings across, he ends it off by just talking about be yourself. Yeah. So I found that, part of the feedback that I've received from people is that, Martin, it's your heart that has captured us.
Yes, so true.
Yeah, so I think, there's the art of leadership. Yes. Maybe we can even talk about the science.
Yes.
But I think there's also the heart.
Yes.
And oftentimes we forget that it's,
that's so good.
You need to also, obviously you can hone in on the art.
Yes, sir.
But there's also the heart.
The heart.
And, deep cries onto deep. The heart is able to touch another heart. So I found that to be quite helpful.
Let's talk to that. I think we'll talk to the science now. Let's talk to the soft skills and the importance of soft skills, and more towards heart. Yeah. The heart of a leader. Yeah. The things that are not seen but are actually internal work. You spoke about emotional intelligence. Yeah. You spoke about being able to be these soft skills that every leader needs. Please speak more to that.
No, I think, look, one of the most profound, I think, leadership attributes of virtues is that of compassion. Okay. The Bible talks about how Jesus was moved with compassion. Yeah. So at let's say at entry level, a leader is someone who cares. Wow. You have to care about people.
That's amazing.
Especially if you want to be an authentic leader, right? You have to care about people. You have to be compassionate. And when we talk about compassion, I think that's different from pity. Pity is merely just a feeling. But compassion will always have a forward motion attached to it. And then another, I think, leadership lesson that I've learned just around the issue of the heart. And that is, it's obviously, what John Maxwell talks a lot into this, that choose to be impressed with people. May people find out along the way how great you are. Wow. But you have to be that type of leader who calls out gold out of the dust in people, to be generous. So I always fight to remember people's names. Wow. I'm that guy who calls. Wow. So I think, the issue of compassion, care, and being impressed with people, it goes a long way.
A long way. Yeah. How, maybe a practical tip, how do you remember people's names? How do you go about, I'm actually laughing at this because I recently met someone. Yeah. It was a very hard name, similar to, it was going to use your tribe. Yeah.
That's so funny.
But it was a vendor name. Yeah. And it was so hard for me to remember because my tongue is not used to it. Yeah. Is there a tool or a tip or certain thing that you use to be able to remember people's names, especially because you're even a leader within a community of faith? Yeah. So you've got a lot of people coming towards church that you meet on Sundays and different days of the week. And the funny thing is that people remember you, but you having to remember them. Is there something maybe that you do or a specific way that you use to be able to remember people?
Look, I think there's also the element of being slightly cunning. There's a tip where I can say, I'll introduce two people. Okay. And then I'll say, you guys are just you're gonna do it. I'm like, oh, that's this guy's name. But there are moments where I just have to be honest and say, look, I don't know your name. Okay. And but also at the same time, people will interpret it as saying this person cares. Okay. Whereas we could just go on and act as if things are normal. But I think for me it's such a powerful tool to know someone's name. It communicates that I care.
Wow. Yeah. Knowing someone's name, podcast family, communicates that you care. That's so beautiful. Thank you. And that's so practical. Yeah. Now to the flip side of the coin, the science of leadership. Maybe as you delve into that, what's your philosophy when it comes to leadership? And then please speak more to the science now of leadership.
Yeah, I think ultimately, leadership has to do with people. Others have spoken around the issue of it being influence, and then others have also spoken to it about being inspiration. Yeah. But for me, I found that, and I'm just speaking more towards my own approach, I'm a relational leader.
Okay.
So one of the things that I really try to work on is the relationships that I have with people. The organizations that I lead are based on relationships.
Okay.
So you'll find certain leaders whom you can say that, they are strong. Let's say their strength is more around strategy.
Yeah.
And others, it could be the fact that they have access to great resources.
Yeah.
My ultimate, I would say, strength, ultimate resource is human capital.
Wow.
And just being impressed with people,
Wow.
seeing value,
Wow.
affirming that value,
Wow.
and then ultimately drawing from it.
Wow.
But I think, especially when you're dealing with people, you have to really try by all means to be a blessing.
Wow.
Try to honor them. Try to outgive them.
That's
So those
amazing.
are some of the things that I would say, just focus on the relational element. Try. I think one of the big mistakes that we make is try and withdraw what we've not already deposited.
Wow.
So work
Wow.
on those relationships.
Wow.
So that's my approach.
And I've seen you do this so well. I've seen how you pursue certain relationships.
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
how you work at mending relationships.
Yeah.
And as you say, out honoring.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys, even earlier on when we were grabbing some coffee and I'm wanting to pay, he wants to pay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm in your turf, it's mine, you're my guest. And it's just fighting for the bill.
Yeah.
And it's such things that I think are the signs of being able to nourish and water relationships.
And I think that's they're also being that authentic leader.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, it buys you a space in the room.
Wow.
There is always room for a person who adds value.
Wow.
And I think oftentimes we come in wanting to draw from an environment and all of that. But I think just look for ways in terms of how you can be a blessing in someone's life. I was even looking at it, sometimes we'll ask a question to someone and say, how can I be a blessing to you? But that's a task.
Yeah. Now they need to think.
I need to think.
Yeah.
But let me get a coffee. Let me get you a coffee.
Wow.
Let me send you something. Let me send you a link.
Wow.
So that's another thing I think it's been such a powerful seed to be able to sow into just different types of
It's
people.
incredible. There's always space for someone who adds value.
Yeah.
Podcast family, that's pure gold.
Yeah.
I think if you want to be a person of value who adds value to people, there's always space for you. There's always room. You don't need to force yourself.
Yeah.
And you emulate this. I don't know how many times you'd send me books, you'd ask me to listen to this and that. And thank you for being that to so many people.
Thanks so much.
And being that relational leader.
Yeah.
And authentic leader as well at that.
Yeah.
Maybe towards that now, what's the greatest leadership lesson that you've learned? And I'm going to pair it with the backdrop of COVID-19 in the year 2020, which came as a curveball to a lot of leaders.
Yeah.
What is it that you've learned in that season?
Yeah.
And then from there also, the greatest leadership lesson of all time or greatest leadership advice that you've received over the years that you live and you see as your back pocket advice when having to make a leadership decision?
Yeah, I think for me, leadership, particularly if you have to look at it in light of just a few, volatile months that we've been in, the necessity for courage. Try to be courageous within the spaces that you find yourself in. Wow. We have a lot of people today who are thought leaders, but thought leaders don't necessarily become leaders.
Wow.
Leaders do things.
That's amazing.
And leaders do things with limited resources.
That's incredible.
And it's amazing how much resources you can attract when you are in motion.
Wow.
So even in the midst of COVID, many people, we had to be quite innovative, had to use the little that we had. But it was so amazing. During that time, we were able to make a move as a church from, somewhat of an obscure venue, to a venue that's more strategic, that is more accessible. But when I look at it, the amount of money that we had to spend and what we had to, believe God for, it required quite a lot of courage. So here's the funny thing about leadership that I found just in my own journey, is that it's not necessarily the person who's brilliant who becomes the leader.
Wow.
It's a person who goes first.
Wow.
And that's courage.
Sure.
So I think another synonym that I can use around the issue of leadership, my own understanding, is that of responsibility. Ultimately, especially in a setting that we are in, we get paid last. In fact, we pay people. we don't get paid. You know what I'm saying? So people will tend to run away from that type of responsibility. But ultimately, we have to be people who gravitate towards responsibility. And when you gravitate towards responsibility, you get an opportunity to lead. And it's not even like, I think it's even broader than saying,
amazing.
okay, so leadership is influence.
Yeah.
But if you have to look at it from an organizational standpoint, it's more than influence. It's responsibility. It's taking one for the team. Yeah.
I love this. If you gravitate towards responsibility, that's leadership.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I always say is leadership is extreme ownership.
Exactly.
As a leader, I think it's John Maxwell who says everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yeah.
As to how you need to take ownership and be responsible. Exactly. Asking yourself the question, what is it about my leadership that has contributed to this result?
Yeah.
Whether it happened or it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's the lack or the deficit that we have within the leadership space, where people are not taking responsibility.
Yeah. No, but I think that also has to come with, and I think we are growing in this thing about how to invite people into the room. Okay. How to vision cast. Okay. I mean, there's the vision crafting element. Yes, sir. But there's a vision casting element.
Please define it.
So vision crafting, oftentimes, I'll even say, particularly in the faith circle. Yeah. Not a lot of people get access into that.
Okay, the vision crafting.
The vision crafting. So I'll get an impression in terms of this is where God wants us to go.
Yes, sir.
But here's the thing. We invite people into that room through vision casting. Okay. And basically finding the terms or the language to be able to communicate that particular vision, right? Incredible. Yeah, because ultimately, God will call you, but you have to call others. And ultimately,
this is so good.
It comes, how do I put it? Our impact will often, be directly linked to our ability to be clear. Wow. So oftentimes we're not clear enough. And as a result of that, people are not buying in. Wow. And when people buy in and they begin to own it, it will begin to show in terms of how they allocate their time, their talents, and also their treasures, which will be money and all of that type of jazz. So I think I'm now beginning to ask myself questions in terms of, am I communicating the vision clearly enough? Yeah.
Please speak to that. You spoke about vision crafting, and we people of faith, and that's where Moses is on the mountain and God is writing the blueprint of the 10 Commandments. Yeah. It's a bit of a personal space. Yeah. Whereas the point leader, you are the one that has to own the vision. Yeah. And then how do you now begin to cast it and involve others, practical ways if you're an entrepreneur or a business leader, and you've got this vision for your company, this vision for, I was talking to my brother earlier on who's doing something in photography, and we'll talk to that question now, working in the business versus working on the business. Yeah. So here you are, you have the vision, but now you need to begin to rally a team that will help you. As they always say, if you want to go fast, go alone, run alone, but if you want to go far, run together. Yeah. The importance of getting buy-in, as you mentioned, which will upscale your impact. Yeah. How do you now begin to rally the right people who are going to be aligned to the vision that you have as a leader?
Yeah, I think maybe let's look at the organic aspects, first of all. That is ban with passion. Okay. Embody the vision. Okay. Live it, drink it, breathe it. People see that.
It's incredible.
So one thing that I can say about a leader is that he's a chief passion officer. He has to be extremely passionate.
I love that.
That is, I believe, is a powerful currency.
The leader is the chief CPO.
Yeah, CPO.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I never heard that before. I'm borrowing that. Definitely going to be using that a lot. A leader is the CPO. Yeah. The chief passion officer.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, so there's the passion element. Okay. And I think the cool thing about the passion element is that it brings energy. Wow. And that energy can be able to, other people can actually leverage off that particular passion. So there's the issue now of passion. Then the second element is about clarity. Okay. And the clarity aspect, unfortunately, is the do it again. Okay. Do it again. Do it. Say it, find creative ways of saying it. Okay. Say it, coin different ways of saying it. Have catchy ways of saying it, and then say it again. It's that mundane repetition. And many of us, I think we are not willing to just deal with the mundane processes of actual communicating that particular vision. As I've said, there's the vision crafting and there's a vision casting. And both those things are such an important aspect.
Can you ever over-communicate vision?
I don't think so, honestly speaking. I think, and the reason why I say it, I think in most cases, we tend to under-communicate it. Okay. And again, I think I'm just going to get back to that word again, of clarity. Okay. And I think maybe let's just explore the issue of clarity. Yeah. I think it has to be clear to the leader as well.
That's key.
it has to
very
be
key.
clear.
That's
It
very
has
key.
to be clear.
If I were to double click on that, there's actually a scripture which speaks to that. We pastors, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Write down the vision, make it plain, so
Make
that
it
those
plain.
who see it
Yeah.
can run with it.
Yeah.
And that element of vision crafting now and vision casting, where the vision is written on the leader,
Yeah.
so that people are able to see you as
Yeah.
the leader
Yeah.
and run with you.
Yeah.
Eh, Okay, please
No, I mean, I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Write down the vision and make it plain.
make it plain.
And you know, the funny thing is this: we write it in a way that it will be plain to us.
Okay.
But from that scripture is that those who read it
Okay.
may run with it. So plain language. I'm a lawyer.
Yeah.
We are gravitating now from legalese to plain language.
Okay.
And the whole issue there is around the issue of accessibility. Can someone be able to, make sense of what you're saying?
That's so true, because your jargon that you use
Yeah.
there, I don't even read contracts. I pay you, I send it to
Exactly,
you. Please
yeah.
explain it to me so that I understand. Because
Yeah.
it's just like,
Yeah. So I mean, in other words, coin it in a way that it will be sustainable. I mean, it could be someone in another generation who reads it and then runs with it.
wow.
So you have to, I believe, just be clear.
Clear. For example, we both from an incredible movement,
Yeah.
the Assemblies of God movement.
Yeah.
Incredible pioneer, incredible leader
Yeah.
who led ahead of his time.
Yeah.
The late Reverend Nicholas Bing.
That's correct.
Africa back to God.
That's it.
Check that out.
Like, not the three dimensions of
No. From Cape to Cairo.
You know what I mean?
Imagine.
Simple.
And here we are years later, the vision is
The
continuing.
vision is still continuing. So I think that's very important, because ultimately, I mean, there's the element of self-leadership,
Okay.
right? But if, let's say, you're going to be leading a movement, you have to be cognizant of the fact that it has to be plain. You're not speaking to yourself. You're not leading yourself at that particular moment. So I think that's something really to take into account.
Something very key, because as you lead, the work grows.
Yes.
And you might find yourself having a key group that you start off with,
Yeah.
that buy the vision, catch the vision, own the vision, pass on the vision.
Yeah.
But you've got new people who keep coming into the vision.
Yeah.
What kind of systems can you put in place where the vision replicates itself, gives birth to itself, so
Yeah.
that someone who's coming in, it just gets downloaded in their system
Yeah.
without you as the point leader having to teach it and transfer it?
No, I mean, you mentioned we are pastor, so we'll have to make reference. It's
Yes,
quite
sir.
funny. The Bible says that when Jesus chose the disciples, he didn't choose them so that they could go and cast out devils necessarily.
Yeah.
He chose them that they may be with him.
Wow.
And the whole idea is that they could catch his cold.
Wow.
So
Wow.
there's that element of impartation.
Wow.
And impartation comes a lot through time spent.
Wow.
And so he was able to invest himself in that 12 and obviously the 3. But I mean, like, there's different
Yes,
numbers
yes,
attached to
70,
that.
yeah.
Whatever the case
Yeah.
may be. But there was the 12
Yeah.
where he really, really invested himself in.
Okay.
So I think that again takes us back to the issue of relationships.
Okay.
How do you cultivate it? How do you bring people in?
This is amazing.
You know what I mean? How do you bring people in? Like
Yeah.
you just mentioned that, if you want to run fast,
Yes.
you can go alone.
Yeah.
But if you want to
Run
run
far.
far, then you have to bring people in.
Yeah.
And I think Jesus Christ taught us a very, very powerful leadership lesson, and that is that you have to pour yourself out in different types of people. And as COVID has told us, or taught us,
Yeah.
you can go viral,
That's so true.
through people.
In a moment, through
Contact.
relations. Yeah.
Through contact, yeah.
Wow. That's brilliant. That's really, really, really incredible. I'm gleaning so much. Podcast family, I don't know about you, but this is really an incredible episode, which is just adding so much value to me as a leader.
Yeah.
Maybe now within the community of faith and the organizations that you lead, we have a lot of volunteers, because you
Yeah.
lead people from a place of where you need to lead them with vision, which is
Yeah.
part of what we're talking about. How do you go about mobilizing volunteers who will be selfless, who will own the vision, especially when you find yourself in a space where you can't yet pay them?
Yeah.
What is it? What can be given, or what are they looking for that will cause them to work with full dedication and commitment, even though there's no financial remuneration at that moment and point in time?
Okay, so as leaders, we love vision.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the people that we lead, and I say this with all reverence and respect,
Yeah.
are not that sophisticated.
Okay.
So people tend to buy into you before they buy into the vision.
Incredible.
So how you relate with people, how you care for them, that plays a very, very significant role. And then from that point onwards, you can begin to impregnate them with that particular vision. So I think for me that a leader can never get too relational, especially
Wow.
if let's say you are looking for a type of leadership that is not toxic, and you're actually looking for leadership that is not autocratic, ultimately we lead by permission.
Wow.
People have to let us in.
Wow.
So I will only be able to lead you at the level at which you have allowed me entry.
That's amazing.
So if you have not let me in,
that's huge.
I can't lead you.
That's huge.
You know, we are not a political organization. We're not paying people salaries, or whatever the case may be. So someone has to let you in. So they'll buy into you. So who you are as a leader becomes even more important before even the vision.
Wow.
And then now we'll touch on the issue of consistency.
Yeah.
As much as people may, let's say they come to you because of who you are, buy into the vision. Ultimately, people don't stay because of the vision. They stay because of the culture.
Wow.
Oh, that is the most
beautiful.
painful thing. There's a saying in leadership circles that, you know, culture will eat vision for breakfast. All the time, every day, anytime.
Wow.
So, and ultimately, you know, culture is a reflection of what you value. And here's the thing about it.
This is so good.
Not the value. Okay, so when you talk about what you value, here's the funny thing about it. There is what you think you value, and there's what you value.
Yes.
And what you value is what will actually show in real time. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So vision is more aspirational, but culture is where you are now.
Wow.
The vision is more like you have a telescope. But culture is, let's have that microscope. Let's begin to look at that. You know, like,
so good.
You know, they talk about how, you know, there's this smell in the room that no one else or everyone else can smell it except you. And nothing, I think we have to begin to just labor in terms of creating a healthy culture. And ultimately that comes into the issue of the values and whatever. And here's the thing, funny enough, if let's say your day-to-day, which is your culture, you are diligent to build that up, it even gives people an opportunity, longer periods, for them to be impregnated with the vision.
Wow. Yeah. I'm going to ask you for 3 tips of creating a healthy culture as a leader. But before that, you spoke about permission and how we can only lead people in as much as they've given us permission to lead them.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who's on the other side of the leader? How do they go about giving the leader permission to lead? Be it a wife who needs to give their husband permission to lead, be it an employee who needs to give their employer permission to lead, be it a church or congregant or volunteer or staff member who needs to give whoever senior authority over their lives permission to lead.
No, I think, look, it's quite a lot to ask from someone. And I think that's why we are getting somewhat of an understanding of leadership and the bad, and you realize I'm dealing with people's lives. So ultimately, there's a necessity for vulnerability. There's a free-fall element to it. So that's why at times, the better the leader, you'll find that he'll tend to do much better in terms of, you know, attracting people. But here is what the tip that I would give to someone who maybe is not necessarily dealing with a, let's say, a viral, point leader. Trust should not be earned. Mistrust should be earned.
Wow.
But we tend to
swap the two.
Yeah. So people already I mean, the moment you meet
already
someone,
suspicious.
Yeah, the suspicion. You know, you're already operating from a deficit.
Wow.
But I think that's rather than start from a surplus,
start from a 10,
and then just quickly work your way down. And also, even in terms of that, I think you have to begin to be cognizant of the type of value that you will draw from a leader. The Bible talks about how, you know, it's given some apostles, evangelists, whatever the case, the fivefold. Yeah. It's quite unfair to expect to draw from an apostle something that let's say you'll be able to draw from something from a different type of a person. So just because you're not drawing this from a type of leader, it doesn't mean that this person does not have value. So I think just be cognizant of that you won't necessarily draw everything from one person, but there is something that this person of value that you can bring into your life.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
This is so amazing. So start from a positive.
Yeah.
I think just put a 10 on someone's
Yeah, in fact, 11 out of 10.
11 out of 10.
Yeah.
This is so beautiful. Give them permission.
Yeah.
Be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Incredible. Then to culture, what tips, I'm going to limit it to 3 because I'm sure there's quite a lot, that one can begin to emulate from wherever they are to create a healthier culture, especially as you spoke about that. I love that analogy of the telescope versus the microscope.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I love how you coined it. How does one now begin to create a healthy culture in whatever sphere of leadership they find themselves in?
I think, look, one of the things that's quite important, I think you need to have a culture that says we care.
Okay.
So a caring culture.
Caring culture.
That again is touching on the issue of the heart, right?
Yeah.
Secondly, one of the things that helps to foster vulnerability, you have to be accountable.
Okay.
I think accountability is absolutely important. And then a culture of continuous improvement.
Okay.
We constantly have to look for ways to be better. Here's the thing that is quite interesting. How do you have a culture of continuous improvement if you don't have a culture of feedback? One of the most painful things, I think, for leadership is receiving feedback. I think we as leaders, we have to become, we have to allow ourselves to be that vulnerable to receive feedback. Look, obviously, there's certain feedback that you will only be able to get at a vertical level, let's say from your mentors, your pastor, and whatnot. But then, let's say at an organizational level, it could be that people are able to. There's somewhat of a space for people to begin to just give healthy criticism or whatever the case, and people have to feel safe. And what that then entails is that the leader has to be secure. And for an emerging leader, let's be honest, that's the one area where you constantly have to, it's a journey for us, let's be honest. We're having to fight with like as you said, we're operating on a deficit usually. And also that deficit is what we think people think of us, and also how we think of ourselves. So as a result of that, some feedback can deal with you badly, you know what I mean? But I think we have to be open to feedback.
Wow, that's amazing. And I love that it begins with you being accountable and just being open to feedback. Because you will never know. You mentioned having a smile in the room. You'll never know until you ask.
Exactly. But I'm just thinking, so I know that some people can be in an environment for so long that even though they knew there was a smile, they grow accustomed to the smile as well. So then I guess the question is, who can speak into that smile?
And I love what you're saying, because that's the beauty of always having new people coming into a space and being able to ask them for feedback, because they're still sensitive. They're able to pick it up. I'm reminded of this analogy of the story of the frog. One that was put into boiling water, and the frog just jumped out because the water was just too boiling and too hot. So immediately it reacted and jumped out. But the other frog, they put into cold water, put it on the pot, put it on the stove, began to turn up the heat gradually. And it began to acclimatize until it died. And I think that's where a lot of leaders die. Because they just warm up to chaos and unhealthy, dysfunctional culture until they just die. Whereas if you have someone new who's like, this is too hot, and jumps out, and they protected from something that could have actually killed them.
No, definitely. But I think also it's just about learning how to discern the voices that speak into your life. Look, I think that the discernment element is also has to do with your knowledge base. We discern a lot through what we know. So it's not even like that. There's obviously the gut feeling. But I think aside from the gut feeling, you need to educate your gut.
That's beautiful.
So it's based on the leadership stuff that you could be looking at, attending conferences, whatever the case may be. Your nose becomes sensitive, and you can pick up, Norman, this is something that we need to be working on. And also the people that are able to speak into your life. Look, there are some people who won't even necessarily smile the smile in the room. They create the smile in the room. So that's the criticism. That's the people who are not necessarily life-giving. You have to be careful of those type of people. They are actually going to create a smile. That smile. But when it comes from a place of love and people who want to see you grow and all of that type of jazz, I think it does make a huge difference.
It's amazing. That's incredible. This is really so. Podcast family is just dropping bars. Martin is just dropping bars and is coming for us. And this is really so amazing. I think one of the things I honor a lot about the work that you do is your writing space and being an author. You wrote, I know the others in the pipeline, but the two that have greatly impacted me is The Multiply Effect and Joseph Generation. I started with the Joseph Gen, which was an incredible read. In fact, I had the privilege of hosting the launch of the book, which was just amazing. Room was just amazing. Energy, it was just amazing.
Great.
It was incredible. And then your recent Multiply Effect. Maybe to our podcast family, let's speak a bit to that. What are some of the main lessons. We'll start with Joseph Jen, and then we'll transition into the multiply effect. And obviously not a lot so that they can get the book. And we'll definitely link it in and speak more to how they can be able to connect with your material.
No, so I always think, you made reference to the scripture in is it Habakkuk, where it talks about write down the vision and make it plain.
Yes.
It's so profound. So I've written those 2 books. There's someone who wrote the book and went to New York with it. Now, that's somewhat to be expected, but I found that quite interesting that my book has been to where I've not been. So, how you document your thoughts is able to make an impact. You look at, let's again come into our context, which is that of the Bible. Paul started so many churches. None of them are standing today, but his writings are still impacting so many people. So the whole idea around writing of books is not necessarily just even to make an impact in this generation, but it's also in future generations. And also around the issue, I'm just thinking, my grandchildren can be able to live off this particular, these books. So it's another way of creating generational wealth, because I really believe that the more I grow as a speaker, there's going to be a greater demand for my books. But all in all, the first book was just really about, raising up a generation that's going to make an impact in the world, having a kingdom mindset and whatnot. And then the second one, I work a bit in the innovation space. And I just always had this desire to raise up people that are innovative. And, just some great news, the Department of Education recently bought a number of copies. Which is like awesome, right?
Amazing.
So the second one, man, it's around the 4th Industrial Revolution, and it touches on issues of leadership. It touches on issues of what else? Spiritual intelligence. So I think those books are quite key.
I think one of the lessons I loved within the multiply effect. Okay, I'll just take 2 lessons. One being Joseph and how you need to be in a company of dreamers. And being able to surround yourself with dreamers. What's the importance of that in the life of a leader? Being able to have a dream and ensure that you've got people around you who are midwives to your dream and not abortionists to your dream.
Sure. No, that's quite it. I mean, I'm just thinking about it. I think ecosystems matter. Because that's where things are cultivated. At times, it's not even like about the strength of the seed, but the soil in which it is planted. So it's vitally important that you surround yourself with people who, how do I put it? Because here's the thing, we often speak about people having the ability to call us out. But what about those who have the capacity to call us up? Who can call gold out of us? So, for instance, Joseph had people who, his family, they were dreamers, or rather they had the ability to interpret dreams, but they were not dreamers. But it was when he connected with another dreamer in prison. He's able to interpret dreams. And then he connects with another dreamer as well. Pharaoh, he interprets that dream. But those who were only able to interpret dreams, they persecuted him. All the people who dreamt, they were able to take him to his next level. So I think ecosystems are absolutely essential. Don't isolate yourself. I mean, today I spent the day with yourself and Jacob Msipa, and man, my perspective has been just enlarged. You know what I mean? I actually now have a permission to dream for things that I can't afford. And just by being in your presence, I was literally given a permission to dream again.
That's amazing. There's quite a lot that I can say, but podcast family, just get the book. We'll link it in the bio. It's an incredible book. I kid you not. It's really one that each and every person that I'm mentoring in my space, it's one of the tools that I refer them to, because it's one that will help you make an impact with the dream that you have. Then secondly, the multiply effect. One of the lessons I gleaned from there, fortunately I also had the privilege of reading the manuscript even before it went out. And one of the things that stood out to me was how the miracle that 5 loaves and 2 fish, and how the multiplication took place when the disciples began to feed the multitude. And now as a leader, because oftentimes you find yourself hungry, but having to feed others. Here you are dealing with breaking bread. I'm like, I'm so hungry, because I think the leader eats last. I'm not sure who, I think it's Simon Sinek. Speak to that, because here you are, you're a leader. You mentioned even within volunteers and stuff where you pay everyone else. And you're the last one, even if there's something.
Even there's something. Exactly. No. It's quite funny that leaders, I mean, for instance, Jesus had the capacity to feed multitudes. But in John chapter 4, we see him thirsty for water.
Wow.
That's the paradox, you know, having to feed while being hungry. I mean, the Bible talks about how those particular, you know, the crowds were hungry. They had been in that type of space for many days. That tells that Jesus was hungry himself. But, you know, Paul talks about how having nothing, yet making many rich. So ultimately, I would try to say to any leader out there, don't start with the budget.
Okay.
Don't limit it to the budget.
Okay.
I mean, even in the space that we are living in today, I'm having to learn the difference between bad debt and even good debt.
Good debt, yeah.
There's some debt that can be used to sort of, you know, bring momentum into the vision.
Yeah.
I'm not pro debt, by the way,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying that, you know, I'm having to learn that at times we are having to innovate because the resources are somewhat limited,
yeah.
but you still have to find yourself in a way where you are dreaming at a bigger level. And maybe let me just say this as I draw to close, that what you need to start, you will get when you start.
Wow.
Many of us are waiting for the right type of resources, the right type of connections to be able to start.
Wow.
But what we fail to realize is that you don't always need funding to start it. You may need funding to grow it, but starting, you need courage. You need courage. You need to have forward motion. Yeah.
Wow. What a way to close off this podcast episode. What you need, you will get when you start. What you need to start, you will get when you start.
Yeah.
Oh, drops mic.
Drops mic.
Wow, that was incredible.
Thanks.
Any parting shot beside that? Where can our podcast family and audience be able to connect with you? Any passion projects that you're currently working on, and how best can they be able to connect and get in touch with the great work that you are doing? And we'll be sure to link it as well in the bio.
Thank you so much. So if you are in the north of Johannesburg, we pastor a church called Eternal Glory Church. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. Please do reach out. Also, my personal account on Facebook. Okay, that one has got 5,000. But Instagram, it's growing. I'm not really a picture person, you know, but it's...
Yeah, just to say, his Facebook, he's got so much content. I always say this, and he thinks I'm buying his face. Honestly speaking, I'm not a status person, but one of the statuses that I consistently read on my WhatsApp is his, because they're so life-giving.
Thank you so much.
You always share so much pearls of wisdom.
Thank you.
And
Thank
we
you
are
so
better
much.
for that.
Yeah, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think we really are honored to have you on our. This has been incredible energy, great heart, as you said, and it's been so great to connect with you at heart level, and to your lovely wife as well, Spear.
Hi, baby. I'm on TV.
We'll definitely be sure in the next episode to speak within family and that space where we find ourselves.
No, thank you so much, Mzwa. You're an incredible leader, and it's such a joy to do life with you and Store.
Thank you so much. I always say that he's my ticket to New York. His book is already there. So globally we'll be flying together, and I'm really so excited and to see what God has in store for us. Yeah. So thank you so much once again for being a guest on our podcast. To you, podcast audience, thank you for listening. This is a podcast episode that you need to share with your boss, your pastor, your leader, your mentor, your mentee, whoever. This is one really that will add so much value to them. And thank you so much for listening. Do share, rate, review the content wherever you're listening to it. And until we meet again, ensure that you are taking your lead and helping us to change the world one individual at a time.